Welcome to the Make the Money and Run podcast for the last day of July 31st, 2020. Casey Freedlove alongside Vasu, Vaddiparty, and Charlie O. Plenty to discuss. News out of Major League Baseball. The bubble is back in Orlando, but we will get things started as we are joined by Kevin Kurtz, who covers, well, the Sharks, hockey, all kinds of different things. He's with the Athletic San Francisco, and congratulations, Kevin, on 3 years as a publication. Thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just getting ready to watch some hockey pretty much all day tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Let's get right into it. We'll kind of go round robin here, but just kind of give me your feel as to how the NHL has handled it. I think we've seen a contrast with Major League Baseball having problem after problem traveling around. The bubble in Orlando, look, we're only one game into the season, but seems like things are going pretty well. What do you make of the way that hockey has handled it? And are you excited for this new playoff format with more teams having a chance to get in?
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly handled it well so far. It sounds like they're up in Canada, obviously, so they're out of the hot spots here in this country, which seems to make sense to me anyway. And it was handled well, not just, I think, with the whole return to play and the playoff plan, but also they put a CBA extension in place too. So I think that, both parties kind of came together and really met the moment. Now, that's no guarantee they'll be able to finish this thing, but I think they certainly have a better chance of finishing it than Major League Baseball does, which I don't think is even debatable at this point.
Well, we've got a bunch of different teams here, and it's an interesting format because you've got kind of this round-robin thing going on, and then the top four seeds are already set up. Just of these teams, for fans that are getting reacquainted, who's hot? I mean, who was hot heading into the break? Who do you think maybe has a chance here to challenge some of the top four if we look at the lower seeds that are trying to basically play themselves into a good seeding?
Yeah, the teams that were hot and cold in March, I'm not sure that's going to have much of an effect. Philadelphia, that was a team that was really hot going in. Dallas Stars were a team that was pretty cold going into the break. If you're looking at maybe the dark horse teams, I do think Philly is one of those teams. Now they have a bye week, or they have a bye in the play-in round, so they won't be facing elimination right away. Pittsburgh is another team I think you have to keep an eye on. They do have to play in, but they got some key guys back that were injured at the time of the shutdown, and obviously they're a team that's won in the past. So I think you look at the Penguins as maybe being a sleeper team, if you can even call them a sleeper team. That's a team that's won 3 Stanley Cups, but in the West, it's so hard. You look at Edmonton and they had the two of the top scorers in the league in McDavid and Draisaitl. Can those guys carry the team? I don't think that's a very deep team, but I think, McDavid is going to be on another level, I think, when this thing starts. So, it's all speculation at this point. I mean, at the end of the day, who knows? It's such an unprecedented time that I think any of these prognostications are pretty difficult.
Kevin, I have a question for you. Hockey, of all the sports in trying to get back to play, seem to have the smoothest road. Is this an unusual coming together of the league and the Players Association, or have they really had this kind of relationship ongoing for quite some time?
I mean, it's obviously been fraught with peril in the past. Just when you look at the lockouts, and there was obviously there's been some bad feelings on the player side because of the escrow payments, losing 5 to 10% of their paycheck every season just because hockey revenues don't meet maybe expectations, or they don't exceed them. The players have wanted to be in the Olympics for a long time. So, I think they both recognize that with the uncertainty of this situation, and especially when you look at hockey, it's such a gate-driven league that, the NHL doesn't exist without fans in the stands. They're not a league that can operate on a long-term basis without any fans in the building. So Who knows when we're going to get that again. But I think they do deserve credit. Gary Bettman, of course, has gotten a lot of crap over the years and gets booed every draft and every time he presents the Stanley Cup. I mean, he deserves credit for what happened here, and obviously the players do too on their side. But I think they took advantage of the situation. They kept the discussions basically between Gary Bettman and Don Fehr, the Players Association head, and they hammered this out pretty smoothly considering what they were able to accomplish, just both return to play wise and collective bargaining agreement wise.
Kevin, how are you? Vasu here. Just wanted to thank you for coming on as well too. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
At The Athletic, and you've been writing all sorts of stuff. I saw your Q&A yesterday. A lot of good questions. I saw your pick of Tampa Bay to win it. I still have my place in St. Petersburg. So the year I moved there, they won their cup in 2003. So I kind of have an affinity for the St. Petersburg team there, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And my Blackhawks, though, I had to get in on your Q&A yesterday, and you gave me a rough time on it. It was a one-word sentence, but it spoke volumes about my Blackhawks. They're 80-1 odds, I think, to win the cup or even get out of the West. Can you talk about the West in general? I really like St. Louis, and I really like Dallas coming into the break. I think their goaltending has been really good. They both were. You said Dallas was not hot going on the break, but who knows? We're 4.5 months, so unprecedented times. The other thing is, for the people that don't follow hockey or have forgotten, this format is very is different. Can you kind of just thumbnail the explanation of how the top 4 seeds are going to work in their round robin, and then obviously the 5 to 12 are going to play each other? But can you kind of thumbnail how the top 4 seeds are going to go about their round robin tournament?
Yeah, so the top 4 seeds in each conference are going to play one another for seeding purposes. So, a team like Boston that was way out in front could end up being the 4 seed, which is from their point of view is pretty unfortunate because they were having such a strong regular season. So, those teams will be playing for position, and then the other teams will play 8 teams in each conference. Will have a play-in round, best of 5. And that's basically that's called the qualifying round. So then, they're playing a best of 5 to qualify for the playoffs. And then it'll be the standard, 8 teams in each conference, best of 7 series on the way to the Stanley Cup.
Are they, when you say the top 4 are playing qualifying round for seeding, are they playing each other and taking the number of points out of those 4 games? Is that how they're going to play each other once, and the best record out of the other 3 games is going to be how they determine seedings? Or are they going to play twice against each other?
I would have to look. I'm not even quite sure. I think they just play each other once. Yeah.
They were all learning at the same time.
Yeah. I forget the specifics of that off the top of my head, but
hey, Kevin,
before I get back to Casey here, what do you think about Dallas and St. Louis and as far as going to the Cup?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas was having trouble scoring goals, so we'll see if offensively they're able to maybe take that up to another gear. Joe Pavelski, obviously a San Jose guy that's pretty well known here, didn't quite have the season that he was hoping. I think he was maybe banged up more than maybe was led on throughout the season. St. Louis, you have to like St. Louis just because they're kind of built for the playoffs. They're a tough team with a hard-nosed coach. They didn't look very good, I know, in their exhibition game, but whatever. It's not much of a concern. I think Vegas is a team that's built to go on a deep run too, and they looked pretty good last night. I watched their game yesterday. So, I tend to like Vegas. I think right now, if I had to pick one team, but those other 2 teams that also have Dallas and St. Louis are both part of the bye. Both have a bye in the first round, so they'll be part of the playoffs.
Yeah, and if you folks at home are looking at Vegas, they're 8-1, so why not? I mean, a few bucks on that doesn't sound too bad to me. Yeah. Kevin, as far as fan interest, I mean, every article I've read, the word complicated comes up as far as describing what we're about to go into. Just from a layperson who maybe doesn't follow hockey as closely as you do you think that the NHL is maybe missing out on an opportunity, considering how many people are stuck at home and want to get their eyes on things? But, people aren't quick to come around to new formats and changes. We're going to talk a little bit later about this ridiculous 7-inning doubleheader thing that's about to take place in Major League Baseball later. But just in terms of the way that hockey has an opportunity, in my opinion, to get some new fans in here, and it just seems like the way the format's set up, you're going to really have to do some reading and some digging and some actual watching to get into it. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, once they get through this play-in round, it's going to be a standard playoff format. So, it's obviously it's maybe not the ideal situation for every team, but I think the way they did it is pretty good. You know, there are some teams that obviously you can make a case don't deserve to be near any sort of a playoff. And you know, you could say Chicago's in that group. You could say Montreal's in that group. You know, teams that were selling off parts ahead of the trade deadline because they had basically thrown in the towel in the season. Do they really belong in the playoffs? But, you know, it is what it is. You know, if we see a team like a Montreal or like an Arizona go on a deep run, will there be maybe more second guessing about that? Yeah, probably. But, you know, they've got 24 out of 31 teams, and the fans are going to be engaged in, you know, obviously about 80% of the league. So I don't think you can really fault them for that, considering that, you know, I think most hockey fans are going to be tuned into this thing from the start, if I'm reading social media right.
Kevin, as you can tell from my hat, I've been kind of out of the hockey realm for a while. Actually, not that long, but I used to live in San Jose, and I worked for a station out of Monterey, and so I covered a lot of Sharks. But I've been up here for a long time, and frankly, just distance-wise, I've been out of touch with hockey, and I've been really curious about. Explain to me this Golden Knights situation. I mean, these guys get added in as an expansion team, and all of a sudden they are to me, the most competitive team in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
What's the history on this? How did this happen?
Well, it starts with spending $500 million to get into the league. And, you know, with that money came the expectation from the owner that they want to have a real shot to compete quickly. Now, not as quickly as go to the Stanley Cup final in year number one, but, you know, they brought in George McPhee, a real experienced general manager. And in the expansion draft, he really took advantage of some teams that, in hindsight, made some real poor decisions. Just, you know, he was able to get sometimes two players and two effective players. Look at Columbus. He gets two real good players out of Columbus because, you know, they didn't want a certain guy to get picked up in the expansion draft. So they had these little side deals going on. Whereas, you know, the best approach, I think, in hindsight, that every team would have liked to take was, listen, we're just going to have to deal with losing one player and don't try to do these little side deals, because that's really where they took advantage of really building some depth on their roster was the way George McPhee handled that. So, you know, again, no one expected them to go to the Stanley Cup final in their first year, obviously, but some guys that kind of came out of nowhere that they were able to pick up off the scrap heap from these other organizations, guys that maybe wouldn't have had a shot with their respective teams to really show that they belonged, had a chance to do that with Vegas, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah, Kevin, as we wrap up with you here a little bit, let's go through some of the series here. Of course, the Western Conference is playing in Edmonton, so clearly the Blackhawks have no chance in there. But two of the teams in the West that did I tell you I was a Blackhawks fan? I just want to make sure I got that out for everybody here. But anyway, the fact is, two of the teams in the West, and I follow the West a lot more than I do the East. I really like Arizona. Edmonton being at home might be a way to go, but also Calgary. I thought Calgary was playing really well coming into the stoppage. So, what do you think about Edmonton and Calgary and Arizona possibly making a deep run? They're lower on the odds scale in terms of chalky type teams. So, but I really like the fact that Edmonton being at home in their city, Calgary being not that far away. But I also saw an article on the Athletic. I don't know if you wrote it or if somebody else wrote it about Arizona and how they can make a run through at least a decent run in the West.
Yeah, they might be able to. You know, Nashville had a weird season. They were one of the teams that made a coaching change. They're playing Arizona. You know, for the Coyotes, it's going to be a lot about Taylor Hall, I think. You know, former MVP winner just 2 years ago, didn't quite have the impact that they had hoped after they made that trade with New Jersey. So, you know, he's a guy that can put a team on his back for some long stretches if he's on top of his game. And he looked pretty good last night. The Coyotes in general didn't look very good last night, but Taylor Hall was pretty good. So a lot will depend on him and if their goaltending can hold up. You know, Nashville, though's got the best defense core in the league. So I still lean towards the Predators to win that series. Calgary, another team that had a weird year, another team that had a midseason coaching change. And, some of their top guys like Johnny Gaudreau were having down seasons, but I think for them it's goaltending. Cam Talbot came in and played well, and I think he's going to be the guy they go with, but he's been a little bit up and down. What was the other team you were asking about?
Arizona, Edmonton, and Calgary.
Edmonton, yeah. I mean, we'll see with Edmonton. Again, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, if they're both on their games, it's hard to stop that team. I think they might run into a little bit of trouble against the deeper teams, but early on, I could see them making some noise.
Okay, as we let you get out of here, I know you said Tampa to win it all. I read that yesterday. But what do you have coming out of the West? Who are they going to play for the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I like Vegas, kind of for the same reason I like Tampa, because the teams that really have something to prove, that maybe had some moments in the playoffs in the recent past that they're not proud of. You look at Tampa, best record in the regular season last year, swept by Columbus in the first round, and just one of the biggest upsets really in recent league history. And Vegas, of course, we saw what happened with them here in San Jose. They blew the 3-0 lead in Game 7 and lost to the Sharks after being up 3-1 in that series. So they're going to be kind of ticked off. And, ironically, they now have the Sharks coach behind their bench and Pete DeBoer. But I like it, those two teams. I know it's I'm picking two teams that had real good regular seasons to make the Stanley Cup final, but those are two teams that not just had good regular seasons, but again, they have a little bit something to prove, I think, to themselves after the way things played out last April.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for being on with us. We've been visiting with Kevin Kurtz. He is at K Kurz NHL. That's KURZ NHL on Twitter, and read him throughout the playoffs. Appreciate your time, my friend, and maybe we can visit when we get a little closer to the cup being hoisted.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. This is Friday, July 31st. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, July 31st, 2020. Casey Freedlove here, Charlie O, and Vasu Vaddiparty talking a little Major League Baseball. And it's funny, Vasu and I were having a late-night conversation last night. I said, I'm not going to plan too much for the show because damn well I'm going to wake up and there's going to be some new news that changes the narrative. And, well, what do you know? I must call me a Castradamus, because we find out today that another team has been affected by coronavirus. The St. Louis Cardinals have two players that have tested positive. They learned late last night, and they've instructed all players and staff to self-isolate in their hotel rooms in Milwaukee until further notice. This, of course, cancels that series. At this point, we've got 6 teams being held out of action, guys. Brewers, Cardinals, Marlins, Phillies, Nationals, and Toronto Blue Jays as a fallout from these positive tests. The Miami Marlins are up to 20 total positive tests between staff and team. They've decided they're going to take a bus back down to Miami and I don't even know what the hell they're going to do. I guess maybe go see a doctor, relax in their hotel room, just hope things don't get worse. I'm telling you, I mean, from a fan perspective and a gambling perspective, you got to be dialed in on this. I mentioned the other day, lower your units. Do not be out here gambling like this is a regular season. You got to be real careful with your bankroll management. I'm not just saying that because I've been a little cold in Major League Baseball this week, but you got to wonder about the mindset of some of these guys, Chuck. I mean, you're reading about it. Every one of these things has emanated from a road trip, and some teams are just heading out on the road. For example, the Oakland A's are in Seattle tonight. They've been talking about that. We'll get to that in our picks, but the human mind is a fragile thing, and when all you're seeing is negativity, it's got to come into the way that you're playing on the field.
Well, and everything's in flux now. All of a sudden, we've got to play more games, so we're all double headers are going to be 7 innings, and the whole thing is a runaway train. And the question is when is the train going to crash? That's because they're going to run out of track. And it's at this point, I think the best thing they could do is call a 72-hour moratorium and just get everybody together from the Players Association and from baseball management and say, all right, we're in crisis. What do we do? And frankly, guys, at this point, you see what's happening with hockey. You see what's happening with basketball. The only answer I can see at this point that makes any sense is that they've got to reassess and create some kind of a bubble. They've got to go to Arizona, or they've got to make it some kind of a combination of Arizona, Florida. Although I know Florida's fraught with problems, so maybe at some other location where they can do that. or maybe Arizona can handle it all. I know that the health situation in Florida, in Arizona, is much better than it was, but they've got to reset. Otherwise, I think it's over.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it's a tale of two leagues, and we thought this was going to be the case as far as I like what the NBA had done. We were actually lauding Major League Baseball just 2 weeks ago because they had such a low rate of positivity. The highest rate that they got as far as their test was 1.8%, and their last test was less than 0.5%. So we thought that they were on track. But people are people. Young athletes are young athletes. They may want to go outside their hotel, get something to eat, entertain themselves because they probably feel like they're invincible. Although, ask Freddie Freeman of the Atlanta Braves about how that goes. But Vasu, baseball's got a real conundrum on their hands. I mean, forget our gambling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The health and safety of the personnel has to come first, and they've got a lot to deal with right now.
They do have a lot to deal with, Casey, right now, and the fact that the positive test came out with the Cardinals, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, you have to go back on the contact tracing and find out where it goes. It's starting to become a very serious situation, and they had the testing done, and it was 1.6%, like you said. That was when they were in their home ballparks and they were self-isolated. Now they're going on the road, and now they're in different cities, and you never know who you're going to run into or if you get it from somewhere else. That it might not even be the players' faults. It might not even be the staff's fault. It's just a matter of where they are and where they're going to. That's the problem right now. Now we just said the 4 teams going into today. Now 2 more teams are affected. So there's going to be more baseball. They're going to have to build in some more off days. They do not want to go past September 30th for the end of the regular season because they don't want to play after October 31st for the World Series. So that part is still going to be on schedule. But you got to think, I mean, if they're 1 or 2 games off, I know they're going to go by winning percentage. If they're 1 or 2 games off, but everybody has the same relative amount of games, as opposed to somebody playing 40 games and the rest playing 60 games, and that's an unfair advantage to everybody from that. And I don't think the answer is folding up one team and then letting everybody else play. That's ridiculous. I saw the MLS tried to do that as well until they finally shut down. But I don't have any answers. You know, our conversation with Ted Robinson later, he didn't have any answers about that either. You'll hear from him after the 12 o'clock, after the noon break. But it's an interesting time, and we just have to see what baseball's going. Apart from our gambling side of it, and apart from the baseball side of itself, it was great for a week. I mean, you kind of forecasted K-Stradamus last week that you said, boy, after this weekend, I hope we get 60 games in because it was glorious for the first 5 days, and then all of a sudden, all this stuff started happening. So I don't know where to go from, and this is, you know, it's hard for us, the 3 of us, to be speechless, but we really are speechless when it comes to this in terms of where do we go, because we don't have all the information. I don't even think the teams have all the information. They're trying to figure it out themselves. So if we're not going to know, how are they going to know if we don't know? It's kind of sad, but you know, I understand why they're doing it, and I understand the reasoning for doing it. So Casey, I guess we'll just have to wait. They've got contingency plans. They've got players that are on the taxi squad. So we may have to have a World Series with taxi squad players playing just to get the season in, because now they've started. I'd like to see them finish, but I don't think they can cancel it. I don't think they can cancel it at this point.
Couple other things to keep an eye on at home. The Cardinals played in Minnesota Tuesday and Wednesday, and the Twins hosted Cleveland on Thursday night, which means that Cleveland used the same visitors clubhouse. And ask any scientist how contagious this disease is. That's something else to keep an eye on. If you've got 8 teams that could potentially be infected, I like your thought there, Chuck. Maybe hitting the pause button might not be the worst idea. Say, okay, look, we screwed up with 60 games. If we have a drop-dead date of September 27th, let's just decide, okay, we're not playing 60. We can't do that anymore. We can't have all these ridiculous 7-inning doubleheaders, or it starts to become something that fans don't even recognize. Maybe we cut it down to 50 or 45, give everybody a couple of days to get tested. Hell, test them twice a day at this point. I mean, you can't be too careful, and they've got the money to do it. They knew that this was a possibility, and we don't want to paint it all as doom and gloom. Look, I've really enjoyed sitting at home, watching MLB TV and having a selection of games from around the country, including watching teams that I might not necessarily have an interest in unless I was gambling on them. But, man, it's hard to be optimistic right now, and that's kind of sums up 2020.
It really is hard to be optimistic right now. And by the way, I was watching ESPN or no, MLB network before I came on with the podcast, and the effect is now 10 teams. with all the contact and everything. There are 10 teams that are affected by this, and so I mean, that's astronomical. That not all 10 teams are not playing, but they are concerned about 10 teams now as this spread has come out. So it's only a matter of time before it's all 30 teams. So they've got to reset. There's not an option, and I think I agree with you. I think 60 arbitrary games may not be doable at this point. They may have to cut that down. And again, I really believe that travel is the issue. I don't think these guys have gone out and been going to gentlemen's clubs and doing a lot of different things. I think it's purely the fact that when you travel, you can't avoid coming in contact with people, and you're going to come in contact with sick people. That's just the realities of it. When you travel and it's during flu season, what happens to you? You get the flu. You know, it's what happens. So I think the only way for baseball to get under control is they've got to figure out how to cut down the travel.
Hey, Vasu, we don't talk a whole lot about your job because it's separate entities, but are you hearing anything as far as your travel related to the game? I mean, are you hitting the pause button as far as going down to the sites you were planning on going to originally?
I am taking the pause button in terms of a few days here just to wait and see. The protocols in Arizona have been set, and I've seen the protocols as far as me traveling. At first, I was going to go back and forth between Arizona and San Diego, Phoenix and San Diego. But I think, and after having a conversation with Charlie the other day, and also with people at the network, I think it's better. And plus, from a rent standpoint too, it might be better too because we haven't worked all year. So, but I think it's just easier for me just to plant in one city for 1 month and do all the home and road games, and then go to the next city in September and do all the home and road games there. I'm not worried about myself. If I'm planted, I think I'll be okay, and I think everything will be fine from my standpoint. The percentages are still low in that regard. So, I'll travel safe and I'll do all the right things out of respect for other people, as well as taking care of myself. But we have not had a full protocol. I have a deposit down in a place in Arizona right now that I'm waiting to see what day I'm going to go, either tomorrow, Saturday, as we tape today, or as we're live on Facebook right now, on Friday afternoon, tomorrow, or Monday to go after this Dodger series is over, to go Monday to Arizona. And then plant myself there for the rest of August, and then go to San Diego. So I don't know. I mean, if the players and staffs, like I said, if they don't know and baseball doesn't know yet, then it's going to be hard for us to know. I know our broadcasters are not traveling. They're doing all their home games from their studio. They're all going to do the games from the stadium or the studio. For road games, I watched the Mariners broadcast in Los Angeles, in Anaheim last night, and they were doing it from Safeco Field. So they've all got good setups. I'll tell you that, though. They've got like 8 monitors in front of them, so they can do a game that way. But as I'm not sure if that part of Ted said, football's the hardest game to do from a monitor if you're not there. So that could be another issue going on. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to do what they tell me to do, and I'll go, and I'll be fine for the most part, I believe. And I'll just plan myself in a city for it. And if it doesn't work and I'm home, then maybe they can work out another plan where I can work from home and do this and do it this way.
Yeah, and Vasu's got a long-form interview with Ted Robinson, of course, Bay Area legend. He's called play-by-play for all kinds of different sports. They're going to talk some Pac-12, some tennis, and some Major League Baseball on the other side of this break. I think that interview runs a little over 20 minutes, so we'll kind of just make this a longer segment before we get to Ted. Guys, I guess let's move into the picks. We can talk a little bit about the NBA bubble. I thought it was a nice kickoff last night. 2 very exciting games. The Jazz rally to beat the Clippers in a thriller, and then LeBron James gets his own rebound, puts it back in, and the Lakers take care of the Clippers in a very, very entertaining contest. I'd sign up for that one every day of the week. And considering that the Clippers were a little shorthanded, I think if you're a fan of that team, you got to be very excited with the prospect of Montrezl Harrell returning and just how well your team and your depth looked from that standpoint. Today we've got another slate, and it's interesting because there's already games going as we record. It's 12 noon Pacific. You've got Orlando and Brooklyn already underway, but take a look at the odds here, folks. I'm going to get my picks in. I have had a disastrous start to the baseball season. Thankfully, I did hit my NBA pick, and I'm going back to the well with a 5-point teaser. You can get those offshore at Bovada. It's -120 to bet these 2-team teasers. Give me some points so I can feel a little more comfortable. I'm going to take the Phoenix Suns against they got the Wizards tonight, and they are a 7-point favorite. Washington has 40% of their roster not even in Orlando, so it's going to be an all-new look if you're a Wizards fan. Look, Phoenix has a little bit of injury trouble too, but they've got DeAndre Ayton and they've got Booker, and they're going to be able to run and gun. And these two teams played a thriller last time, a combined 272 points the last time these two got together. I'm going to take Phoenix and tease them down from 7 to 2 points. And then in the nightcap, the Sacramento Kings are laying 3 against the San Antonio Spurs, who will be without LaMarcus Aldridge. Yes, they've got DeMar DeRozan, so they're going to be able to score. But the Kings have had a nice run against San Antonio, 4-1 in their last 5 against this team. So I'll take Sacramento from a 3-point favorite to +2. So the 5-point teaser, Suns -2, Kings +2. Let me toss in my baseball pick because I think this is probably our last segment before we go to the interview. I think that the A's get back on track. I'm a little worried about their having to fly up to Seattle, but I'm not a big fan of Taijuan Walker. He's 0-1 on the year for Seattle, 13.5 ERA already, 1-2 with a career ERA of 4.54 against the Athletics. Meanwhile, Sean Manaea, 6-4 at the 3.69 ERA and 11 career starts against Seattle. Oakland is better than 3-3, and I don't just say that because I follow the team very closely because they're on my radio station. They should be playing better. They've got the bats to perform better. I think Manaea is going to come out, definitely improve off of his not great first start. So I will lay the wood there with the A's -190. What are you looking at today, Charlie, as far as the slate? And congratulations on a good week.
You know what? Yeah, and last night was perfect for me because it rained. So, so that was great. NBA wise, I'm going to go with the Bucks tonight. I was really surprised as I looked at the Bucks and how the playing time has been distributed among their starters, and I was shocked to find out that Giannis has averaged just at 30 minutes a game for the entire season. And their whole starting 5 are right at 29, 30 minutes starting throughout the entire season. These guys have got great legs. I mean, they are ready to rock and roll. They have not played a lot of minutes. And I think it's going to serve them very well all the way through the playoffs and through this play in and then through the playoffs. They come in -4.5. I like that. I really do. And to me, at this point, the Celtics have got a lot to prove. You know, we tout the Celtics all the time. We tout Brad Stevens. We do all these kind of things. What are they winning? You know, we tout them, but they never win. So until they win, I'm a Bucks guy all the way at this point, and we got to see what they're going to do. As far as baseball goes, I really struggled today to come up with something to pick for baseball. I don't know. I didn't like a lot of things that I saw, so I'm going to go with, and this is a little off the board. I'm going to go with the Padres on an under. It's under 11.5 against the Rockies. And I know I'm playing fire because they're playing in Colorado. But the thing about it is that the Padres are going to be seeing a pitcher that they've seen about 20 times in John Gray. And so I think that's going to give them an advantage. And the Rockies are going to be seeing a pitcher, Garrett Richards, first time. So it's going to take them at least 2 times through the order to try to get used to him. And so I'm going to go advantage. Padres there, and I think the runs will stay low. So I'm really rolling the dice on this one. So.
Well, you know, the gamblers at home, don't be betting your pink slip or your mortgage. Just let's
exactly.
Because we don't even know if we're going to have a season in a couple of days. But I agree, it was a tough slate to look at. I know Vasu has been on fire, so if you're going to fade either person, fade Chuck and I, and
yes,
go here.
Exactly.
Vasu, what are you looking at today, my friend?
I'm looking at the Trailblazers at 4:00 Eastern. I'm going with the Blazers -3.5. I think the Lillard and McCollum combination will do great, and I believe that they'll be able to handle Memphis, at least in this game 1. I think they'll come out and shoot well. If they shoot well, obviously they're going to win. And I'm not sure about Memphis yet. They're an 8 seed, and I know Portland's playing to get in there, but obviously the bookmakers have them at -3.5. So I just got a feeling that they're right on that, and I like the Bucks as well too. In baseball, for all the reasons that Charlie said about the Bucks, in baseball, I like the Yankees over. They just keep scoring runs after runs after runs, and the Red Sox pitching staff is not great. They're going with a reliever to start. They're going with an opener, and Ryan Weber. Their over-under is only 10. I know Jordan Montgomery is a pretty good pitcher, and they're in Yankee Stadium. So maybe there might be something to that. But, boy, the way the Red Sox played against the Mets the last couple of days, they did go under. But I had a feeling the Yankees' bats, as hot as they are, especially against the Orioles and what they did last weekend with the Washington Nationals, they lost 2 out of 3 to Washington. Washington's actually surprised me a little bit. So I got to think that this game might go over between Ryan Weber and Jordan Montgomery. And then I like the Atlanta Braves. They ripped Rick Porcello last Sunday night. They got 14 runs total, and I think they got 8 of them off Porcello in about 2 1/3 innings. So Sean Newcomb, it's a rematch of Sunday night. Sean Newcomb about a 125 favorite, and he's going to be a good start for the Braves tonight. So that's what I'm going with. Those 4 games right there are the 4 games that I'm going to go with. And it's been a good week so far. Yesterday was a little struggle. I thought the Twins would come through a little bit, but they did not. So we'll just see we'll see where to go from there.
Yeah, we'll save the bad beats segment because we've already got tails to that. Like, I wouldn't have picked the Angels if I knew Mike Trout was going to have a kid yesterday, obviously. And I feel like that Dodgers Diamondbacks game, if they played 10 times, it's going to go over 8 out of 10 times. And yesterday we missed it by a half run. But that's why Las Vegas has beautiful sports books, and I'm sitting here in a radio studio with an MTV shirt on. So I don't know. I paid about $8 for this, I think, at Kohl's. That's the way the world works. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up here because Vasu's got a long-form interview with Ted Robinson, great broadcaster, works for the Pac-12 Network, the tennis channel. You've seen him on NBC Olympics coverage. He's done play-by-play in the NFL. And obviously, he's in touch with a lot of these different leagues. They're going to discuss what's going on with Major League Baseball, college football's decisions. And, boys, maybe we can get into this tomorrow because the SEC, the big boy conference, made their announcement, and that's certainly going to change the way and the structure for college football this year. Folks, thanks for tuning in. We are all over the place. MTMAR Podcast on Twitter. Make the Money and Run Podcast on Facebook. Give us a like or a follow. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you've got individual games you want us to discuss, you can email the show, mtmarpodcast@gmail.com. And, of course, the podcast is available all over the place. Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, you name it. Just look up Make the Money and Run and look for our little Hamburglar friend with the money sacks in his hand. That's how you know you're in the right place. For Vasu, Vaddiparty, and Charlie O, I'm Casey Freedlove. Stay tuned. Vasu's interview with Ted Robinson on the other side of the break. Good luck with your bets today, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Field news.
Yeah.
Plus, I have, and I think perhaps this goes to the mental wellness element. I'm trying not to engage and embrace something until I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's a big, I'm serious about that. I think that's
true.
It's a big part of the mental wellness challenge for college athletes right now. And USA Today wrote a great story about it earlier this week. The uncertainty is the biggest mental health challenge. So people need to either come out and say, we're going to play and here's how we're going to do it, or we're not going to play. But kicking, I think this is the week where that has to stop. And it seems like that is stopping. It seems like every conference is coming out with a definitive plan. And then you can still pull the plug on that plan. But to give people some certainty is important. So here's a general big tent thing. Last year I thought was going to be a really good year for the Pac-12 because the conference had a lot of veteran quarterbacks. And it looked like it was going to be really good. And then sadly for Utah, they had that fall at the end of the year. And it cost the Pac, I think, a lot. Oregon still had its terrific finish, but I thought Utah was going to be the team that had a shot to crack the CFP.
Me too. Yeah.
And sadly, they just fell at the end of the year, and it was really a shame. This year is going to be massively different because you touched on it. You have Chris Peterson leaving at UW, and then you had the most, unfortunately, I think, just unpleasant way that Mel Tucker just bailed on Colorado. It just still, I shake my head as I'm saying it now. I just can't believe the man conducted his personal business in that manner. It was very sad to see. But you have 2 coaching changes. We have a ton of quarterback changes. Washington has to find a new quarterback. Oregon, with a very good program, has to find a new quarterback. Stanford's going to break in Davis Mills, a new quarterback. Colorado needs a new quarterback. Utah needs a new quarterback. We go down the line. So who has returning quarterbacks? And there are two programs that I think are the ones to watch. And everybody every year says this, but I mean this. Don't sleep on USC, because Keaton Slovis proved himself last year. When JT Daniels went down, Slovis came in and played awfully well. He has a year of experience under his belt. They kept Graham Harrell as the OC, which was vital. USC has talent. As we saw in the NFL draft, they're a wide receiver school, man, and wide receivers are a dominant position right now in college football. So you don't sleep on USC. And the other program in the North is Cal. And we all know Cal had a very strong finish to the year, but Cal has a lot of good things in place in terms of Justin Wilcox has established the program. Chase Garbers established himself as a quarterback near the end of the year, especially with his performance in the big game at Stanford. They have a very good defensive core in place. I think that's going to be, if there's going to be a year for somebody to break that Oregon, what's been Oregon-Washington and a little bit of Stanford connection in the north of the Pac-12, this is the year, and the Cal would be the team to do it. I also love Jonathan Smith in Oregon State. The question, again, is going to be breaking in a new quarterback.
No doubt about it. Well, like I said, we hope we get to that point where we can just talk about sports and all that. But I wanted to, God, you're so well depth in every sport here. So I wanted to hit a little tennis with you, because I like tennis. I watch the tennis channel. I watch the tournaments. Sometimes the overseas tournaments I see. I guess you're out of your LA studio. You're not traveling very much whenever you're doing tournaments. So I had the ATP schedule and the WTA schedule here. They're going to get started on August 21st in New York. Are you going to New York for the tennis channel for the U.S. Open? Or is that your plan?
So actually, I am going. I just discovered this week I am going to New York for the U.S. Open to work the international feed. Tennis Channel does not televise live matches at the U.S. Open. They don't have the rights to do that.
Oh, I see.
So because of the pandemic, the only television that will be allowed on site at the U.S. Open will be ESPN, which is the rights holder, the U.S. rights holder. And then the USTA will do its own international feed, which this year will have huge importance because none of the world broadcasters can come. And so they've done a very nice job of hiring a pretty strong group of people to come in and work the international feed this year. So I'm going to go back to the U.S. Open for the first time in 5 or 6 years after, I think, 28 years of going to work the world feed. And it will be on site. It will have all the protocols. I'm just learning about them, but there'll be daily testing, and announcers will work out of separate booths, just as they've done so far in baseball.
Right.
The partner you're calling the match with, we will be in separate booths, able to see each other, but there'll be some space. And then the French Open, Roland Garros, is going to play in late September.
Right.
And as of right now, Tennis Channel is the rights holder. And as of right now, we're going to Paris. France is in a much better place. I mean, obviously, most countries in the world are in a better place than we are here. France is opening. France is putting, as of Wednesday, they're putting a testing spot in the Charles de Gaulle, if I can get my French going, or airport in Paris, so that when you disembark a flight from the U.S., you will be tested right there on site at the airport. And if you clear the test, you'll be able to go and not have to do the 14-day quarantine. That's huge progress. So as of right now, Tennis Channel is going to Paris. So I will be going at the end of September, early October for the French Open.
Our guest, Ted Robinson of NBC Sports, the Tennis Channel, Pac-12 Network. So talking about tennis, I see all the sites that they're going from the U.S. Open, Austria, Spain, Italy, France, Russia, then the French Open, and then 2 more tournaments. The last tennis tournament was February 29th in Mexico when Rafael Nadal won, and then for the women, it was in Mexico as well too, with Svitolina winning their tournament.
Vasu, good job. You can do tennis too. Come on.
No, you know what? I don't think so. Give me about 20 years, Ted. Tell me when you have some jobs open and when you're ready to step down, because right now you're the king of every sport in our area. And I get a lot of people that say, "How do you know Ted Robinson?" I go, "It's amazing who you know when you have a glass of craft beer with them." So trust me.
Exactly right. Don't trust a spitty brewer, as my friend Dan Gordon says.
That's our friend Dan Gordon. That's his motto. But anyway, like I was saying, so I was doing. What do you think about USA Tennis? Because it's not a popular sport amongst the 4 major sports in this country. I know it's very popular across the world. The men's tennis, I was looking through the top 100. You have to go down to 21 to get to John Eisner as the first U.S. tennis player. And there's only, from my count, I have John Eisner 21, Taylor Fritz at 24 in the ATP ranking. There's only 7 male U.S. tennis players in the top 100, whereas you go to the women and you've got 2 in the top 10 and 27 in the top 100. What is USA Tennis? How do they feel about that? And what's going on with USA Tennis in terms of how they're developing young talent? Or the women seem to be getting more excitement and more draw than the men do from the U.S. tennis standpoint like that.
So two-pronged answer, Vasu. First, on the stature of tennis, professional tennis in the United States right now, I think it's very clear that it is a niche sport. And I say that not in a derogatory way at all. I say it's very similar to hockey. Hockey has an incredibly passionate, loyal, vibrant audience. It's not a mass audience. It may be a mass audience for the Stanley Cup Finals, but otherwise that's exactly what tennis is in the United States. When I go to events, if the Davis Cup was playing in Birmingham, for example, I went, twice, I think, to do Davis Cups in the 2010s in Birmingham. You go around the parking lot and count the number of states that you would see license plates from. People would drive from all across the Midwest and the Northeast to come to Birmingham to see Davis Cup tennis. So that's my point. It's loyal, it's passionate, it's vibrant. It's not a mass audience unless it's the Wimbledon finals or Serena Williams is playing for a championship or Venus when she was in the running. So now, second point to player development. USA, unless I'm completely blanking here, there has not been an American man in the finals of a major since Andy Roddick at Wimbledon in 2009. That's 11 years.
Right.
An American man has played in the final of a championship, I believe. And of course, we've had plenty of women since then, including not just Serena, but Sloane Stephens, who won the U.S. Open a few years back, and Sophia Kenin, who won the Australian Open in January of this year. American women's tennis right now is the best state it's been in my 34 years of broadcasting tennis. Never been better. It's not just Serena, it's depth. We have an amazing array of young women, and there's no question in my mind that the legacy of Venus Williams and Serena Williams will be in Sloane Stephens and Madison Keys and others I won't name, but there are so many more women of color playing professional tennis at a good level than ever before. And that's, to me, direct legacy of Venus and Serena, to their great and undying credit. Why the men can't get there is the big question right now. It's what the USTA has to address. John Isner is a wonderful guy. He's been a terrific player. He's never been really in serious contention to win a major championship. And he's 34 years old. So despite having one of the greatest serves in the history of the sport, it's probably not going to happen for him. And can there be some up-and-comers that will jump him this year? Well, it would have been this year. It's probably going to have to be next year now, 2021. Can one of those young guys like a Taylor Fritz jump him? Riley Opelka. There's a guy 7 foot, by the way. Riley Opelka, who's in the top. Yeah. I don't know what his rank is right now. He's somewhere in the top 50.
Yeah, he's in the 50s. I have it right here. Yeah, I think he's in 52 or think.
Okay, 52.
Last time I checked.
7 foot. He doesn't say it because no 7-footer wants to admit they're 7 foot.
Right.
But he is 7 foot, and he's got a chance. He's got a chance to be a little bit better version, I think, of John Isner, if he's as passionate and devoted to the game as John has been. John has been an extraordinarily great competitor. That's a phenomenal competitor. So that's where U.S. tennis is and needs to get. It needs to get the men into a more competitive state. And I think one theory to finish, Vasu, is that to attract players at a younger level, for women, tennis is still the best professional sport to try to make a living at as an American woman, the best. Basketball is coming back with the WNBA, but still many WNBA players have to go play in Lithuania or somewhere else in the true basketball season to really make their money. And then they play the WNBA season to have a home summer league. That's not the way in tennis. If you're a woman, a young woman, you can be a professional tennis player and make a very good, you can do it. Men at a young age have so many options. That, I think, is part of why this difference has occurred.
Last tennis question for you. We got about 3 minutes left with Ted Robinson here. very generous with his time. I appreciate it. I only was planning on like 20 minutes to hit all the stuff, but then we hit all the other issues, and I appreciate it, and I value our friendship from the standpoint of you sticking around, because I know you got other things going on right now. But so thank you in advance in case I don't get a chance to thank you at the end. So you talk about women's tennis, the depth of women's tennis and the number of players. I saw where Ashley Barty is not going to travel to the U.S. Open. She's the number one player in women's tennis, for those that don't know. But you've got Simona Halep, and you've got Pliskova, and you've got Sophia Kenin, and you've got Andreescu, and you've got a bunch of people in the top, a bunch of girls, a bunch of women, I should say, in the top 20 to 25 to 30 that can challenge the top players in women's tennis because of the depth that you set. From a male standpoint, everybody knows Djokovic. Everybody knows Nadal. Everybody knows Federer, the big three. Dominic Thiem has made a name. Medvedev has made a name for himself. In the men's game, who can challenge these three? Because of these three in a tournament, it's like Larry Bird said in that All-Star game. He was playing for second place in some of these tournaments. So I'm sure you remember that quote. But give me some names on the men's side besides the big three that can contend as we go on in tennis, either 2020 or 2021. I can take it to my other show too. I can let them have some value picks too.
Well, okay, so that question has been the dominant question in men's tennis for probably 12 years now. Who can challenge the big three? And of course, there was a fourth for a while in Andy Murray. And Andy Murray won 3 majors. He won the Olympic gold in 2012. But unfortunately, a hip injury has taken Andy out of that standing right now. He's still trying to play, but no longer at that standards, which is extraordinary. And he's won 3 different majors, each of them one time, obviously. He's also 34, going on 35. So the time to threaten the big three, that's not going to happen. So here's, in me, the 3 top answers, which are fairly obvious if you're a tennis fan. Dominic Thiem, who's already been to a couple of finals, had Novak Djokovic down 2-1 at the Australian Open final in January and lost the match. We thought that was the breakthrough. He's won. Alexander Zverev, who had a bad year in 2019, had issues, as a lot of tennis players do, managing their career, family involvement, agent problems, money, all that sort of stuff, coaching. Okay, Alexander Zverev still immensely talented. And then there's a young Greek player who's a wonderful player to watch, extremely bright young guy named Stefanos Tsitsipas. And
I have him right here on my list. And
if you ask me personally, who's going to be the first guy to actually, because as Thiem and Zverev have said this, they said in Australia, no one's broken through until one of us wins one. And if you ask me who I would be willing to put a little side action on, to me, it's going to be Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas will be the first next one to actually win a major.
Is it wide open in the U.S. Open and the French Open for the women? Now that even though Barty's out, it's wide open. She could have been challenged anyway because of the depth of women's tennis. I think I could see five women here that could win the U.S. Open and the French Open, regardless if Barty was there or not.
Yeah, the U.S. Open, Vasu, is on the women's side. To me, it's the Serena Williams story. And I think that's the biggest motivation and push to have the U.S. Open take place this year was it was known that Serena would play, and she continues to chase her record 24th title with no travel concerns. Serena was going to play, and the American women, who are very strong, will all be there. I think that was a big motivation for the U.S. Open to go forward. The question that we still don't know as of this date, who else is going to play because of all the travel restrictions that still could take place between now and then. Right now, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic have entered the event that normally is in Cincinnati, but will be played in New York on the site of the U.S. Open in the middle of August. They're both in that event right now. The question has been what kind of travel restrictions will be placed on players coming from other countries, not just getting into New York, but when they go home. Will they have to quarantine for 2 weeks? And if that's the case, then I think most foreign players will not, of stature, most foreign players of note will not come to New York to play the U.S. Open. Because in the story, in the situations you referenced, right after the U.S. Open, there are 2 major events in Madrid and Rome. Those are major events for both men and women, and then right to the French Open. The European players have no travel problems playing those events. If they're forced to quarantine coming back from New York, they just won't go to New York. And I think back to where you started, that's the Ashley Barty story. Australia has been very, very strict and very successful in limiting COVID as an island continent. They've been extremely successful. And so an Aussie athlete's not going to risk it.
And we bring it back to Make the Money and Run. I just wanted to make sure that I get our video panel here. Here we are. There we are. You guys there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Casey, can you hear me?
I'm here. Good stuff there with Ted Robinson. Always a pleasure to hear from one of the voices of Northern California. And of course, I remember watching him do swimming during the Olympics. I mean, the guy's got a lot of talent. He's the kind of broadcaster you're like, okay, here's a sport, sit down, do it perfectly. He's like, I got it.
Yeah, no, it was really good to talk to him. You can catch that also on the Stables Network. Do another show called The Conversation With, and we talked a lot about social issues. We talked about a little bit about mental health. We talked a little bit about the Olympics, and we talked a lot about Pac-12 and tennis, as you heard, for this show's purposes for Make the Money and Run. And also, I wanted to ask him, being a big Notre Dame alum, and his family and his kids went there, and his grandkids will probably go there. They've got onesies all over the house for the grandkids and everything with regards to Notre Dame. So I was curious to see what he thought about Notre Dame being in the ACC, playing all conference games this year in football for the first time. Did he fall out of his chair? And he goes, and his statement was, and you can hear the rest of it on a conversation with Ted Robinson about how he thought when Jim Delaney was the Big Ten commissioner that was their best opportunity to go into conference in the Big Ten when they offered him about 20 years ago, because there's not a lot in common with the ACC schools as there are with the Big Ten schools. So that wraps it up for this, Casey. I'll let you close out on it, but thanks to Ted. And again, you can hear the interview on Stables Podcast Network, and you can hear it on Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify, and a conversation with Vasu, Vaddiparty, and Ted Robinson is the full interview is about an hour, and you can listen to it there.
Yeah, tune it in. Just part of the Stables Podcast Network. All kinds of good stuff going on there with a bunch of variety of shows. So thank you, folks, for tuning in. Vasu will have the pics posted. I'll have the podcast uploaded here in just a little bit. And tomorrow, guys, we'll talk a little bit about the SEC, kind of defining how college football is going to run this year, I think, and plenty more. Got a bunch of picks out there. Good luck to everybody again. If I could give you one bit of advice, just slow your roll. We got plenty of sports ahead over the course of our lifetime. Right now, I'm very nervous, and I'm typically not nervous. I like to bet, but right now it's like, yeesh. So for Vasu Vaddiparty, Charlie O, I'm Casey Freedlove. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. Last day of July. What does August have in store? Find out tomorrow right here.